Good afternoon. Welcome to our KGW Q&A about the unemployment process during the COVID-19 pandemic. We know many of you face many new challenges, and we want to help you find the answers to your questions. My name is Galen Ettlin. I'm a reporter and anchor for KGW, and this afternoon I'm joined by Jared Cowley, senior digital producer for KGW, and Roland Chlapowski and Jessie Aronson with Worksystems, a nonprofit that helps people navigate situations like this. Thank you all.
Happy to be here.
We will
Thanks.
be taking questions live from you in the audience on social media about the unemployment process and what you can expect. And a quick reminder, our wonderful guests here do not work for the Oregon Employment Division, so they're not making the decisions about your filing, but they do partner with the state and know the system very well. With all that said, I'd like to actually start, though, with KGW's Jared Cowley here to quickly go over what we're seeing online. What information are people searching for the most on our platforms? What are they talking about?
Yeah, thanks. Two of the biggest topics that people are always looking for information about is unemployment and lately the stimulus checks. With unemployment, anytime we publish anything about unemployment, we see a big surge in traffic. A lot of people are looking for that information and they're looking for answers. As you can imagine, almost 300,000 people have filed for unemployment claims in the past 4 weeks in Oregon. And so that's a lot of people who are out of work. And when you couple that with the difficulty of the employment department having to process this unprecedented number of claims and some of the problems that are going along with that, which means not everybody is getting their benefits as soon as they want to, people are eager to have information to help make their life a little bit easier. Today we had new numbers come out for the country and for Oregon. It looks like you had about 54,000 new unemployment claims last week. And like I said, there's been about 300,000 filed over the past 4 weeks. Some good news that was also included from the Oregon Employment Department was they paid out more than $97 million in unemployment benefits last week, which was significantly more than the week before when it was 23 million. And so people are just looking for information about their unemployment benefits. And I think that we're all in a situation now where probably most of us know someone who has lost their job because of COVID-19 or been put on furlough, something like that. And so it's a difficult time for a lot of people. And so they're looking for answers or looking for help during a very challenging time. So I'm glad that we have some experts on here today to answer some questions and help people out there who are in need of help.
Definitely. I think in that vein, let's turn now to Roland and Jessie with Worksystems. What are people asking you the most right now?
Well, the number one question is when am I going to, when can I get my check and what do I need to do to get it? And that is something that, as was mentioned, is a little bit up in the air as the employment department works through a backlog of claims, although there's some good progress being made there. But that would be the number one question, sort of, do I qualify? How do I get it? When will I get it?
We're going to dive into a lot of those issues here, but I guess, starting out, if someone's new to this boat, have to start the process, what's involved to get started?
Yeah, so there are two ways that you can file for unemployment insurance. One is online and the other is over the phone. And right now, when in doubt, if you're not sure whether or not you would qualify for unemployment benefits, when in doubt, just apply. Because right now, the state is in the process of figuring out how to implement the expanded eligibility criteria that came down from the federal government. And so at this point, it's just wise to get your claim started and go from there. You have to first do an initial claim, so start your claim, and then after that, you have to do a weekly claim. And for that first week, right now, that's your waiting week, and then afterwards, you'll start to get your weekly checks.
Now, Jared mentioned just the sheer volume of people around the country, let alone in Oregon and Washington, that are going through this process right now. So obviously the system is kind of backed up in some ways. How long could this process take for most people?
So one of my job duties at Worksystems is doing something called rapid response, where we go out and when we know that there is a likely layoff, we'll work with the business to try to do layoff aversion. And if that fails, then we will do presentations to the affected workers about the benefits that they can get through the unemployment system, through the Oregon health insurance marketplace, and others. And so we've been holding daily webinars on this, and the unemployment insurance representative who has been doing those with me has said that generally, if you want to play it safe, assume 3 to 4 weeks before you would get your initial payment. Now, that it might not take that long, but if you're wanting to plan and be extra cautious, that is the timeline that the representative from unemployment insurance said would be the prudent timeline to sort of plan off of.
Kind of along those lines here too, if someone wants to check the status of a claim that they've made, how would they go about doing that?
So the first thing is that if you have a confirmation number from your initial claim, it has been received and it is in the queue for getting processed. There's not a great way to find out about the status of your claim. And so this has actually, though, been part of the issue. A lot of people who are understandably very anxious to figure out what the status is of when the check is coming their way are calling the unemployment insurance line to talk with a representative and get that information. Unfortunately, that has just been slowing down the process for everyone. So when it comes to the what the status is, if you got a confirmation number with your initial claim and your weekly claims are going through, just assume that it is good and you don't need to call in to check on the status. And in fact, if everyone were to dial back that a little bit so that people who had actual problems with their claims were the ones who could get through to the unemployment insurance representatives, or people who couldn't claim online, we would be able to get through that backlog faster.
Now, some scenarios or people's individual situations here. We've had a lot of people ask, if I have to stay home and care for my kids and can't work, am I still eligible?
So yeah, the employment department put out a really good graphic, sort of indicating who is eligible for unemployment insurance benefits in the current environment. So it's a little bit so there. The eligibility requirements have been relaxed on two different levels. First, really early on, Governor Brown said we're going to expand who's eligible for benefits at the state level to include those people who might have to be home to do childcare, provide childcare because the school's shut down, who might not be comfortable going into work because of potential COVID-19 exposure, anyone who wants to follow the stay-at-home, save lives order. Everyone in those circumstances will is potentially eligible for unemployment benefits, and so those are scenarios where in the past you might not have been eligible for unemployment insurance, but right now you would be, assuming that you have all the other requirements in place.
You've touched on how the rules have changed a lot recently to allow more access to more people. How can people in these new situations determine how much unemployment they're eligible for?
So the best way to do this is if you go to the Oregon Employment Department website, there is a claims estimator where you put in information about the income that you had over the past year or so, and then it will give you an estimate as to what your weekly benefit amount would be. Now, it's important to say that that is just for the state level benefit. If you are approved for unemployment insurance at the state level, you'll also receive a $600 federal supplement to that weekly benefit amount up until the early July. And so people will be able to get their weekly claim estimate, add $600 on it, and that would be their weekly benefit amount from now through early July.
And just to clarify, we've had a lot of questions from people asking about that federal benefit in relation to their applications at the state level. It sounds like that's like if your application is approved.
You cut out a little bit, but basically, if you're approved at the state level, you will automatically be approved for that 600. You don't need. There's not a, or rather, I should say, there's not a separate application process. I know that the state just started to release some of those $600 payments in the last week, and so as they work to figure out how to implement that with the recent changes.
Jessie, turning now to you, Roland has touched on a few of these answers now about what your nonprofit is working on specifically, but you can touch a little bit more on some of the bigger topics here. What is Worksystems doing to support people who are currently out of work due to the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, Worksystems, we operate a variety of employment training programs. Typically, those services are offered in person at local workforce centers or through community-based organization partners. And with the COVID crisis, we've had to transition those services to a remote delivery model to maintain the social distancing guidelines. And so our staff are starting to work remotely, or they have been working with current customers over the phone, via email. But we've recently launched a COVID response line for Multnomah and Washington counties, where the general public and people just needing assistance accessing services can contact these phone numbers and talk to our staff about, general system services. They can get some UI support around common questions. We have safety net services, so if people need assistance with food resources or housing or childcare, we can refer to that. And we're also getting set up to do the TriMet low-income fair enrollment remotely. We've always been a site to do eligibility for that program, but now we've set up a process so we can do that and manage that remotely. There's a few staff on the line this week, but we're really launching it in earnest next week. Again, lines in Multnomah and Washington counties. But they will be fully staffed on Monday, and staff will be available to take calls from the public and people needing assistance. Another important piece is we also have a line in Washington County for small business assistance. And so small businesses in Washington County, that are challenged with, helping their employees navigate the UI system, wanting to access small business administration loans. They can contact that number and get support for what their individual need is.
Piggybacking off of that subject here, we've heard from a lot of people who are either small business owners or employees of what is the best recourse for, say, the business owners right now? And is there a difference for those that are trying to stay open during all of this versus those that are having to shut down?
I'm not a small business expert, so I can't really answer that, unfortunately. I don't know, Roland, if you've heard anything with your interactions with businesses, but
so
have you heard anything?
So there are different resources that are out there, although I was just reading today that some of the small business forgivable loans that were through the CARES Act have gotten depleted. But what I would really recommend any small business do is every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm holding webinars with someone from unemployment insurance, to talk about some special programs, from the Small Business Development Center Capital Access team to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available through the Small Business Administration, and then someone from Prosper Portland to also talk about other local resources that are available. I will say that the need right now is unbelievable, and it's been outstripping, or the pots of money that get put out there get utilized very quickly. And so the two programs that I'd say are the best, and assuming that the federal government continues to put money into them, are the Payroll Protection Program, where basically what you get up to 8 weeks and up to $10 million of income to pay for your payroll expenses. And then the economic disaster loan, the EIDL, and that's also available on the SBA site. Right now, those are on hold because of how much money has already been given out, but I know that there are conversations at the federal level to put more money into them.
For those of you just joining us here on all of our KGW platforms, we are speaking live with some representatives from Worksystems, a nonprofit that helps people navigate the workforce and unemployment, like what we're seeing right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are taking your questions live on our platforms right now. So I'm going to turn to a question from our viewer, Anne. She asks, if I have a full-time job and a part-time job on the weekend, can I still apply for unemployment?
So, at the end of the day, you can apply and it's never going to really hurt. The worst case scenario is that the employment department says you're ineligible. And so that's about as much as I really am able to say right now, as the employment department is figuring out the expanded eligibility sort of outlines that came down from the federal level. Those still haven't been entirely fleshed out. And so, yeah.
All right, thank you for that. We've got another question here, who says that we've heard that the self-employed can apply, but Oregon unemployment says they have a completely different system for them. So what about the self-employed? How do they claim? This may be kind of a similar answer. It may depend on how they flesh out the system here.
Yeah, that's a different version of the same question. And I know that unemployment insurance is going to be putting out more details shortly. I would wait for in the next week or two. Hopefully that will be out. I'll say that our representative from unemployment insurance in the rapid response sessions that we hold has said to just go through the regular process and to get those to be in the system. But that is not necessarily the official stance of the employment department. So it's one of those things where there will be some guidance coming shortly. And so you can either wait for that guidance or try to go through the normal claim system, knowing that you might need to change later on.
We'll continue to take some viewer questions here live on our Q&A, but I think in the meantime, Jessie, I'm going to turn to you and ask about some of the resources available to people. We've mentioned just the sheer numbers. Nearly 300,000 people have applied in the last month in Oregon alone. What about the resources for people who maybe do not speak English or are not English proficient? What's out there for them to help get through this process?
Well, that's really one of the strengths of our system and the COVID response lines. We have a lot of staff who speak Spanish and other languages, so people can call into that line and get support in their own language. Where we do not have staff that speak a particular language, we are going to be plugged into an interpretive services line, so our staff can support folks who speak less common languages than some of the typical ones. But that really is where our system is trying to support people, is people that are challenged with accessing unemployment insurance and other services, either because of a language barrier, or even just not having access to a computer or internet. And so that's why we created a phone number, a phone line, easy access to that type of support.
Again, if you're just joining us here, we are speaking with Roland Chlapowski and Jessie Aronson with Worksystems, a nonprofit helping people navigate the unemployment process. I'm going to turn now to another question here. This one's from Brian. He says, I was laid off about a month ago. I have filed claims every week, but they have not yet been processed. Will I receive the additional $600 for each week that I filed?
That is a good question. I can't answer that specifically. My understanding is that the $600 payments started to go out in April. And so if you filed prior to April, those weeks likely don't apply, but you still will get the same number of weeks that you will be eligible for those. So probably for any claims that were from the beginning of April on, you should expect for that $600 to be tacked on.
Roland, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but from all of your experience here, would you recommend people try calling or apply online?
1000% apply online. There are certain people who, when they try to apply online, it will say, we can't do this online, please call us. And so for people who have, a legitimate reason, whether it is lack of computer access, or they get that message that they can't complete the claim online, or they need some interpretation services or something, like those are all great reasons to call. But for everyone else, if you can do this, your claims online, that will help it move more quickly for everybody.
Speaking of the online platforms, I want to bring back in Jared Cowley, our senior digital producer at KGW. And Jared, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier how people are really searching for all of these answers. How can I get this answer right now? Can you speak a little bit to when people are searching for those things? And we've got lots of links and resources on kgw.com for people to access too.
Yeah, that's right. Are you able to hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, we can. It sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, on KGW.com, we do have a lot of resources. We have an article that we update almost every day where we take questions that viewers and readers send us, and we answer those questions, getting the information from experts. And we have an article about they, which will be on the front page of KGW.com, and it'll have all the resources that we sent from these two wonderful experts we have here today. So if you go on KGW.com, on our social media channels, YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, you'll be able to get a lot of the answers to your questions. And we don't have all the answers, but we are trying to track down as many of them as we can, because we really care about getting those answers for the people out there who.
Absolutely. Just in case anyone couldn't hear, because I know the connection's cut out a little bit, but we are all working from home, so we appreciate the efforts of everyone getting this out on the air. That was links we have on our front page right now, kgw.com. So we encourage you to go there. We have as many answers as we possibly get out there for you. Let's turn now to another viewer question here from Lisa. She says, I was already getting unemployment until recently, but they have now expired. I got a letter that says I'm not eligible for any extensions. I should be able to get 13 more weeks, right? Do I have to do anything?
So this is one of those instances where talking with a claims representative is probably going to be their best bet. The one thing that I will say is that I know that the employment department has a lot of automated systems in place, including what letters get sent out to people. So I wouldn't necessarily take what's written in that letter as 100% the truth, and it would be worthwhile to talk with a claims representative to see if they would be eligible for an extension now that the CARES bill passed at the federal level.
What about if someone's claim is denied? Is there something that they should do or something that they should reassess?
Well, It depends on why it was denied. So, for instance, I know that there are some self-employed people or gig workers, freelancers who would not be eligible for unemployment insurance under the normal rules. And when they do an online claim, a lot of times it will say this. This claim is not valid. But what they should continue to do is just continue to claim like normal, because the employment department is working out the details of how to bring those people who are newly eligible under the federal rules into the system. Otherwise, if you got a denial letter that was different than that, it would that's a reason potentially to talk with unemployment insurance to see sort of what the reason was. But it really is one of those things that's going to depend on why. If you believe that you're eligible because of the expanded rules, then I would say don't worry about calling unemployment insurance just yet, and just sit tight and continue to claim. But if there's a specific reason that doesn't seem right, then you could call them to get more information.
All right, Jessie, this next question is for you. What if someone just wants to get back to work? Who's hiring right now?
Well, there's actually a lot of businesses out there that are hiring and really need workers. I mean, some of the obvious ones are the grocery stores. Manufacturers need a lot of employees right now. A lot of delivery driver jobs, and there's a lot of jobs in healthcare too. We've seen a big need for caregivers, CNA roles, really just a lot of open positions. So Worksystems, we've been cataloging all the openings out there that we can find, and have a list that's updated daily of current openings. I shared a link with KGW earlier, so if you can post that up, that's somewhere that folks can go to see who's hiring now, the types of jobs, and how to apply.
Again, for those of you just joining us, we are speaking with Roland Chlapowski and Jessie Aronson with Worksystems, a nonprofit that is working to help people get through the unemployment process. I'm going to turn now to another viewer question here, has another example of kind of a scenario that they're going through. This is from Jeremiah, who says, I had 2 jobs. One was a server at a restaurant. Is there a way to only claim against the income that has been lost since it was my part-time job rather than my income from my full-time, which I am still receiving?
So, unemployment insurance is based on a loss of income. Although, if they're still working a 40-hour-a-week job, they may not be eligible. The best advice is sort of what I said earlier. When in doubt, apply, and they can then see whether or not you would be eligible. You don't get in trouble by filing that initial claim. You just sort of get that process started, and they can say whether or not you will be eligible under the expanded rules.
And I know we might just be saying this again, but I kind of want to reiterate, because as I think one of the biggest questions that we've been getting is, I've been waiting so long, I haven't heard anything yet. And a lot of people are calling over and over and over and over again to get that status update. And you recommend people hold off on that a little bit, just try once or twice at a time.
Yeah. So hopefully we're through a lot of the worst of it, because we have the employment department has hired a huge number of people, and they've repurposed a lot of their other employees to just work at getting those unemployment insurance claims processed right now. We're hopeful that it's not going to continue to be a month, 3 weeks, or something like that. But what I would do is hold off unless it is unless you have a letter that says that there's a problem with your claim. Otherwise, just continue to claim as normal, sit tight, and wait about 4 weeks. And if you don't see something at that point and it's really getting dire, that might be an appropriate time to call. But if it's that you filed and next week or 2 weeks later you're wondering what the status is, don't don't call, because that basically is pulling people away from processing those claims to answer these questions and answer the phone calls. So wait as long as you can bear before calling about the status of your claim. If you got a confirmation number, they have received your claim and it's in process.
I think Roland and Jessie, this could be for either of you here. I'm sure your lives, like many of ours, changed overnight, but for you guys, it was probably amped up considering what you do for a living with Worksystems. What has that been like, and where do you see this whole process going in the next few weeks?
Well, it's been somewhat chaotic, and we've been working rapidly, trying to see how our system can still provide services to the public and customers we've been working with. I mean, we are a program that helps people in times of need like this, and so it's been a dramatically fast, I would say, pivot for us to look at, what does it look like to transition to delivering services remotely, and where do we have staff capacity that can be responsive to the public, when there's a lot of need out there, just a lot of need for information and support. I mean, Roland's team, he mentioned the rapid response team, where they respond to business layoffs. I mean, I think they probably went from, a couple a week or less, hearing about layoffs, big and small, but to just being inundated, I mean, overnight. And so really just trying to adapt those service strategies to meet a much greater need. But then also just trying to figure out, hey, how do we do this remotely and not in large group settings? So we have been working really quickly and rapidly, and doing the best we can to support the needs of the public and the community.
I want to remind all of our viewers that our guests here from Worksystem do not work with the Oregon Employment Division. They are working for a nonprofit that helps people navigate this process. So they're very familiar with the system, but not directly connected to the state. We've got another viewer question here from D, who says, what if you worked for half of 2019 with an employer, but the other half as self-employed? How do you go about applying under the CARES Act?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, because as I've sort of mentioned, the self-employed rules haven't been fully fleshed out by the employment department yet. That said, if you do have some regular wages already in the system, because the way that unemployment insurance works and the way that they pay out benefits is based on a small sort of payroll tax that employers pay for regular wages, which is why some employees will be eligible for unemployment insurance in normal times, and why others, like self-employed people who don't always pay that tax, are not going to be eligible. Now, in this instance, where you've got some normal wages and some self-employment wages, it can be a little bit tricky, but you can start a claim based on the wages that you've made over the past year from both jobs. The employment department will look at tax records, and they likely will only see the first the wages that you made that are on file from those normal wages, the non-self-employment one, and then they'll get in touch with you, and you will have to figure out that other part. But again, this is something that they're still figuring out, so it's really hard to answer. It's just one of those things where it doesn't hurt to apply, so do that, and then they'll work out what level of benefits you're eligible for later.
We're about 30 minutes into our conversation here about the unemployment process with representatives from Worksystems, a nonprofit that helps people navigate through all of this, not with the state imposition here. I want to get back to some of the basics, and I know you might say some of the same things here, but it's so important for people to understand this. If someone did a claim and hasn't heard back, how do they check their status?
Yeah, so the thing is that you will receive mail about your claim, and so whether you get whether you're approved or denied or anything, you will receive mail about the status of your claim. It's just that that has really slowed down because the system is backed up and they're moving through this backlog of claims that came in all in a very short period of time. So the big thing that I'll say is please, please do not call unemployment insurance customer service unless it's been a month and you haven't received any paperwork and there's some sort of issue. If you've applied in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sit tight. I know that it's a really easy thing to say and it's really difficult to do when you have bills and expenses and uncertainty in your life. But if everyone were to minimize the number of calls they make to unemployment insurance, the staff there would be able to more quickly process all of the claims.
We're speaking with Roland Chlapowski and Jessie Aronson with Worksystems. Oh, yes, go ahead, Jessie. Please follow up.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. I mean, we have heard from some people that have got letters that said there was an error with their claim or it's on hold or whatever it may be. And I think that that was some folks who may have applied in the first couple weeks where they answered a question in a way that, you know, maybe they said that they're not available and actively seeking work because they know they're going to go back to an employer in 2 months. Those are the sort of responses that can hold up somebody's claim and, you know, generate those error letters. But, you know, we've heard from the employment department that they've worked on that and they're kind of fixing those things on the back end. But it, you know, those are some of the issues that are holding up people's claims. But as I've heard, it sounds like those are being fixed as they can.
And I'll piggyback on that. I mean, if you get one of those letters, it's actually potentially a good sign because it means that they are in the process of getting that claim processed. And so don't get overly worried. A lot of those letters, as Jessie said, were sent out originally because of the old rules, and then the employment department is figuring out how to sort of streamline that because there are a lot of people who won't be looking for work because of COVID-19, and now that is entirely fine due to the expanded eligibility at the state level.
And for those in the comments who say that they've got more questions for the Oregon Employment Department, we want to remind you that tonight at 7 p.m. on KGW Q&A with Kristen Severance, we will be speaking with Gail Krumenauer, who represents that department. So we can answer more of your questions then. You can send them to us right now. You can also text us at 503-226-5111. I've got a few more viewer questions here before we wrap this up here in the next few minutes. From Mark, he says, I got furloughed yesterday and I'm using my sick and vacation time, which will expire April 25th. When can I file?
So there are a couple things here. They've got options, but basically, if you are using your paid time off as sort of a wage or an income, you have to wait until that is exhausted to end up being eligible. You can still start your claim. They'll just say you're not eligible if you're receiving that paid time off. It could be beneficial to not use your paid time off if you do plan on going back to that same employer. If it's a temporary furlough, you can just not, if you don't need to use that paid time off, you can apply for benefits immediately. If you do receive those, though, that will count as income, which would reduce the amount of your claim or make you ineligible depending on how much you're making.
Got another question here about making adjustments to a claim if needed. This one's from Tammy here, who says, on my initial claim, thought I was going back at the end of the month, but that has changed. What do I do now?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good cautionary tale for anyone who is claiming now going forward. There is there's an option to choose that you are on a temporary layoff. And really, right now, if you plan on staying connected to your employer, you should go forward with the mindset that this is a temporary layoff. The only thing is that there is an option for you to put in a date for when you expect to go back. Right now, just leave that blank. So if you haven't filed yet and you get to that point and it says what is your return to work date that estimated, leave it blank. You do not need to complete it. For people who have already put that date in, I know that unemployment insurance staff are diligently trying to remove those from the system. And so if you put one in, I wouldn't don't worry. They'll either let you know that there was a problem, or they're going to take that off of the claim for you.
For those of you who are joining us now, we are speaking with Roland Chlapowski and Jessie Aronson with Worksystems, a nonprofit that helps people navigate the unemployment system, not directly connected to the State Employment Division. We will be speaking with a representative of that department tonight at 7 on KGW to answer more of your questions. In the meantime, though, I want to turn this back to both of you, Jessie and Roland, and ask, is there anything else that you'd like to add through all of this process? We know it's a tumultuous time. Everyone's doing an incredible amount of work to try to meet this need. Anything else you'd like to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we have been doing is a daily webinar that I would encourage people to check out. Particularly every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I hold webinars with a representative from the unemployment insurance department, and we can answer questions in real time. They are someone who would be able to answer questions more concretely than me. And so that's a resource for people. It's every day at 2:00. We have small business oriented ones, Tuesdays, Thursdays at 1:00. And then next week, we also have a webinar for housing and the eviction moratorium issues with a attorney from Metropolitan Public Defenders, who will talk with people in a live webinar about how to make sure you're protected from eviction under those moratoria.
Now, I want
Yeah, and just
a
to,
message of hope. Is there one that you have for people? Oh, and Jessie, yes, I think we're on a little bit of a delay. Please go ahead and finish your thought.
yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, a lot of people will qualify for unemployment insurance support, but, as we've talked about, there's a delay. So really just, do what you can to plan for that delay, and, make sure you're taking care of your basic needs. I mean, there's a lot of resources out there right now with the Oregon Food Bank. People can apply for supplemental nutrition assistance benefits, but basically, access those resources. You can get them by contacting our hotline. If you want information, 211 is also a great resource. But there are a lot of supports out there right now for this time. So please make sure to connect with what's out there.
Love ending on that note of hope, looking forward. I want to thank both of our guests today from Worksystem. Thank you both so much for your time. And thank you to the KGW team who put this all together. We've got a whole bunch of people who are messaging back and forth, making sure that everyone's on the same page here. So thank you all so much for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And a quick reminder to all of you watching here right now, tonight at KGW, we'll have Gail Krummenauer, Oregon Employment Department, to answer more of your questions. Again, that's KGW Q&A at 7 p.m., hosted by our Kristen Severance. Please send us more of your questions or text them to 503-226-5111. My name is Galen Ettlin. Be well and see you soon.